Hello, I'm Edie Lush, Executive Editor of Hub Culture. Really pleased to be joined now by Paul Holthus. He's the founding CEO of World Ocean Council. Welcome.
Thanks, Edie.
So, you're in Hawaii. I'm sorry that we're not together in the south of France, but tell me a little, first of all, about how the oceans are reacting to the change in activity, human activity, during COVID-19.
Yeah, well, it's been quite a significant event for the oceans in the sense that there's a lot less activity on the ocean as things have really slowed down. And that really illustrates how critically involved the ocean and ocean economic activity is in the overall global economy. So the upside of that is the ocean ecosystems are recovering a bit due to that reduced activity. However, all of us humans are actually finding how dependent we are on the movement of goods and the provision of services from the ocean, particularly through the shipping and the movement via maritime transport.
So tell me a little more about that. Tell me about our dependency and how we've seen merchant seamen's movements diminished.
Sure. So 90% of international movement of goods is via shipping, so via maritime transport, and so we
Hmm.
all depend on that global network of vessels moving not only containers on container ships, but fuels on tankers, the bulk commodities that supply the manufacturing of various goods around the world. So all of this is fundamental to the global trade system, and all of that depends on those mariners, those men and women who work in difficult, dangerous jobs to make sure those ships are moving around the world with those goods. They have been caught up in the difficulty of transport and movement of people due to the restrictions imposed with the coronavirus. And so a lot of ships are not moving as well, as quickly, and as timely a manner as possible. And so these supply chains start to get disrupted, and we all then face the consequences of food or other essential products not getting to where they need to on time.
Hmm. So, in addition to shipping, I know you're also an expert on the impact of climate change on some of the offshore energy that's needed to make the transition to a cleaner economy. Can you tell me what you've seen over the last year and what challenges still face?
Sure. So we at the World Ocean Council, we work uniquely to bring together all of the ocean industries to collaborate and provide leadership on ocean sustainable development. In terms of the energy transition that the world is undergoing, an important part of the future of the world will be energy that comes from ocean-based sources. So I think we're all probably familiar with the wind energy growth that's we've experienced over the last decade or so. More and more of that is coming from ocean areas. Offshore wind has been growing incredibly over the last 10 to 15 years, largely in Northern Europe, but the big change over the last year or two has been the extension of that growth to other parts of the world, North America, and especially Asia. And what's different in these areas, though, is that the topography of the um, immediate adjacent areas to the coastline is much steeper and deeper. And so we need new technology that's developing very rapidly to have floating wind turbines offshore.
Hmm.
And so these are anchored to the bottom. They don't have the poles that hold up the windmill blades, the turbines, directly stuck into the ocean bottom. And so this is going to be a huge area of growth as wind energy moves into areas like Japan and Taiwan and Korea, here in my home state of Hawaii, California, the east coast of the US. A lot of areas now are getting ready for a boom in offshore wind energy, and this will be a big part of that the ocean plays in the energy transition. Along with that, we continue to see very promising developments in wave energy technology. that's got a bit of a longer trajectory in front of it, but
Why is
will
that?
be a very important source. The technology is facing challenges. The ocean is a harsh environment, and so
Mm.
mechanical instruments that are put in the ocean and meant to oscillate with waves, or turbines that are based underwater to spin with the tides as they move, they are suffering from the impacts of salt, from sediment, from a whole range of operational concerns that really affect how well they can continue over the long term. And so that R&D phase of wave and tidal energy is still underway, but has great promise for providing significant energy from ocean sources in the future.
Hmm. And tell me a little about how we're seeing ports and coastal infrastructure adapt to climate change events or not, as the case may be.
Yeah, well, this is another really important part of the this interconnected global ocean economy. All of those vessels that take part in the shipping industry, so 80 to 90,000 vessels, 4 million fishing boats around the world, all the vessels that support our internet connectivity, 98% of which goes via submarine cable, so that's all supported by
Mm.
cable laying ships and repair ships, the cruise line industry, etc. All of those industries depend on a port at some phase or another of their operations, and all of those ports, or many of those ports, are subject to increased frequency and intensity of storms and cyclones and hurricanes, and all of them, to some level or another, will be affected by sea level rise. So these different ocean effects of climate change will really be creating challenges for the future operations of ports, and this is already happening now, as we see every year with the small islands in particular that get hit very hard by these stronger and more frequent hurricanes or cyclones or typhoons, depending on which part of the world you're in. Um, and so adaptation, preparing the infrastructure of these ports and adjacent coastal areas is a critical part of ensuring that they can remain operational in the face of these extreme weather events.
And can you give me an example of one port that's doing a good job in terms of adapting?
Well, I would say that several of the ports in the northern countries and in Australia in particular have been undertaking studies to really evaluate the risk that their ports face and develop
Mm.
the infrastructure improvements that are necessary. So there are quite a few that are um, developing those construction plans and implementing them as they become clear about what kind of storms they will be facing and what levels of sea level rise will be affecting their particular location. I think the important challenge is for those ports in less developed countries and small island states where there are less resources, there's less information available to really quickly undertake that risk assessment. I'd also highlight, though, that there are some important studies coming out and results that we're learning about in terms of green infrastructure as well. So you can improve the long-term viability of a port and associated infrastructure by maintaining the health of coral reefs, by maintaining or
Mm.
restoring mangroves and seagrass beds, these natural ecosystems that create a part of what's called green infrastructure that really works in partnership with the hard gray infrastructure that we normally think of when talking about ports.
And where are we seeing developments in that, in the green infrastructure?
Quite a bit, for example, in the Caribbean and several Pacific islands, as countries realize, in particular tropical developing countries realize that they've got these what's called nature-based systems that really provide an opportunity and a resource to maintain the safety and viability of coastal areas. And, and though it takes significant and dedicated effort to ensure that those ecosystems remain healthy and can serve that function. So it's a combination of sort of these hard, as I say, the gray infrastructure plus the green infrastructure that really combines to make a viable and resilient port and coastal area.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us here during the Transition Forum, and I hope to see you in person next year.
Likewise. Thanks so much.